This is our friend Ben Weingarten, contributor to Newsweek magazine and author of the book American Ingrate about Ilhan Omar. Ben, I was having a little bit of fun there. Look, no one likes Vladimir Putin. No one thinks he's a liberal. No one thinks he's a Democrat or a friend of the West. I agree that he's evil. The question is what to do about it. I'm not sure if Joe Biden's in control or if others in the White House are. They seem to have different messages. What do you think?
Well, it's funny that you talk about Vladimir Putin being no liberal and no one that the West would want to do business with. And you go back and you look at the profiles of Vladimir Putin, some, I guess, 2 decades almost on now, and they were fawning over him as the great hope for Russia. The very same people who today call Vladimir Putin the equivalent of Hitler and seem willing to risk a World War III by imposing a U.S. governed no-fly zone, which could lead to a shooting war with the nuclear-armed Russia. And let's point out a couple other things. You talk about the fact that the White House has had to walk back the commander-in-chief's statements on issues which could lead to potentially a nuclear exchange at the end of the day. We have had a policy regarding certain issues like China, Taiwan, for example, of strategic ambiguity historically. This is not strategic ambiguity. This is a total lack of clarity, apparently, in terms of what the commander-in-chief actually believes and seeks, what those who are his handlers actually believe and seek. And it leads to a question of who actually is in power. You know, sometimes unpredictability can be a useful and positive thing in context of issues, of matters of war and peace. But in this case, it's really disturbing. It's incredibly disturbing when the president's comments have to repeatedly be walked back. And then the last point I'll make, and I say this sort of sheepishly, but sort of seriously as well, because it is a deathly serious issue. Does Joe Biden want Vladimir Putin to go before or after his regime helps negotiate an Iran deal 2.0 on the Biden administration's behalf? That alone speaks to the total strategic incomprehensibility on its face of what the policy is. But ultimately, the policy results in a stronger Russia, a stronger China, and a stronger Iran. And the American people, by the way, and others around the world, of course, suffering under the sanctions that have been imposed to date.
Yeah, you're so right about the difference between a certain unpredictability in style versus a confusion. I think it's different to be unpredictable, to be confusing. Joe Biden is confusing. He sends 2 contradictory messages at the same time. Believe it or not, Trevor Noah, and I played this clip the other day when we had Joel Pollack on. Trevor Noah, who is quite a liberal comedian, actually, seems to have sobered up a bit watching Joe Biden in office. And here's a little clip he did the other night, and I showed this once before, but it's so on point. Whatever you thought of Trump, you didn't mess with him because you didn't know exactly, you knew what his interests were. No one denied he was sort of an American firster. He didn't suffer fools. He was undiplomatic, but in that he would say things clearly rather than in vague, gauzy language. But he wasn't herky-jerky. He wasn't hot and cold, yes and no. Here's Trevor Noah doing quite a good job of summing up the difference between Biden and Trump.
There is no denying that Saudi Arabia isn't playing ball with Joe Biden. And you know what? You can say what you want, but this would have never happened to Donald Trump. Never. No one was ever ignoring Donald Trump's calls. Yeah, because if you ignored Donald Trump's calls, you didn't know how he would respond. Maybe he'd send an angry tweet, or maybe he'd just ban your country from everything. You don't know. That's why I bet in these situations, Biden actually wishes that he could hire Trump to step in as President Wildcard. Just keep everyone on their toes. Because if Trump was calling, you best believe the UAE, they'll be racing to pick up the phone. Oh, Mr. Trump, we're here, hello? Too late, Ahmed. You made me wait 2 rings. We're bombing the UAE and the UFC, just in case.
And the thing is, his point about taking the phone calls, I think that's really on point because Biden sent emissaries to Venezuela, to Saudi, to the other OPEC regimes and said, will you replace Russian oil? Some of them didn't even take his phone call. You would never not take a phone call from Donald Trump. First of all, you would be very interested in what he wanted to say. You knew he was the decider. You knew he was the boss, or at least if he said something, that was the law. And you either respected him or you were afraid of him or something. That's gone. If you wanted, if there was someone on the phone from America, I don't even know who you would want on the other line to know you're dealing with the decider, Ben.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.